Welcome to my podcast. This is the Jer Show with Jer and friends. Hey, black shirt, gray shirt, and black sweater. How you guys doing today?
Well, as a black shirt, I personally am doing fantastic.
Oh, good to know.
As a
That's
gray
enough
shirt,
of other people.
I'm doing,
so I like games like Tsuro. It's spelled with a T, which I think is pretty cool because it's like, it's a bit out there. It's a bit different. It's not like other girls. Okay, I'm done.
Do we have that on record?
Oh yeah, we have that whole thing recorded. Oh, that was.
Well,
we waited until I hit the start again.
Wait till we press
Ian, are you ready for your second intro now? I don't know if you can follow that.
No,
This is, I think, my favorite thing that
it's his
Ian has done.
podcast now.
Make sure
Welcome.
you like, comment, and subscribe.
Welcome to Dancing with the Bards, the Jer Show. Sorry,
It's Jer
with
Show
Jer and
edition.
friends.
Dancing with the Bards, Jer Show
Jer
edition.
Show edition.
I am the bards and I am dancing.
You need to give the rest of your review like tap dancing up there.
Sometimes we like to tap. So that's an anti-Donna reference. Ignore me.
As for the friends, I'm Ian, a co-host, joined by Will
Hello.
and Brooke,
Howdy.
and our guest, main host, is Jer. Jer, how you doing?
I have very specific conditions when I agree to be on a podcast.
Oh yeah.
Also, hello, everybody.
Hello.
He's actually currently on a mini elephant.
Yeah, I have a crown that I made them make for me. Like, they had to, melt down the iron and copper. It was a whole thing.
God, he made you make a crown. I just had to eat all the red M&Ms.
You guys each got tasks that were specific to your skill set and how I feel about you as people. I'm so sorry, Ian. I did not know that, did not know you were allergic to that. So sorry.
I am honestly lost. How was everyone's New Year?
I by mistake killed Ian.
I
with a
tried
prank.
to go. So I am of legal age. It was the weekend. I just have to say that for business reasons. But I tried to go to a bar for New Year's Eve at 11 o'clock, and it was closed. Like, no one in the parking lot closed.
Brooke, you're 12 years old. Why would they let you into a bar?
They saw her walk up and they just turned the lights off and locked the door.
It felt like that,
Maybe you
man.
should leave.
I was so mad. I literally, I bought a dress. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be an adult. I'm going to go to a bar. And then I went home and danced with my cat at midnight because
Brooke,
that's all I could do.
Everybody
Like
in the
a
bar
real
knew
adult.
that if you walked in, you'd show them up in your great dress. So
was
they
a great
could not
dress.
let that happen.
It was such
So
a
they
good
did that
dress.
thing where they all went quiet inside. They're like, everybody shh. And then you walked away like the main character you are to live better days without their sorry asses.
The only thing
Also
that was
great dress,
on
I'm sure.
the only thing that was on that door was a sign saying missing cat and owner. And that was it.
Classic New Year's.
For anyone who is listening, Jer, we haven't heard from you since April. How are you doing?
We don't need to get into that. I'm doing as well as I can, guys.
All right, good.
I'm pushing through. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Jer, how do you feel about spiritually enlightening your dragons?
Personally, I feel that everybody should be legally mandated to do it, but that causes a whole political discussion about free rights, and, But personally, I think everybody should be legally mandated and forced, by force if they need to spiritually enlighten their dragons.
Then you must love our current game for this month.
I do!
Tsuro.
I do! It's about that thing you said.
Yeah, that Tsuro, as you said earlier.
Tsuro.
Tsuro.
Tsuro. It's like Chia.
Tsuro is a tile placement game designed by Tom McMurtry and published by Calliope Games in 2005. You have a 6x6 grid, and the goal is to make a path for your dragon that doesn't lead off the board or into each other, and to be the last one in the game, to reach spiritual enlightenment, ideally.
You really feel it when you win. You can
You
feel
really
the
do.
It does
enlightenment.
feel terrible when you lose.
It does lead to
I wouldn't
horrific-
know. I won both times.
I will stab you with a pencil,
Get
sir.
out. You think this podcast is about winning games? You don't understand anything.
No, it's about making friends.
It's weird for me because the last two times I played this before the podcast, I won both times, and I lost both times pretty quickly.
I will.
Yeah.
It's one of those games that is so casual and casually designed that it cannot be played competitively. I would also say it's one of those games that you really can't understand until you see it. Like, your explanation means nothing if you haven't seen this game in action.
It's very visual.
We didn't get to peek into the rule book. I'd be interested in if it was just as... So, like, we covered Munchkin last, and we all know how I feel about that. But
I heard you liked it.
I heard it was your favorite game, and it got the
But
best
I'm only
rating.
friends with liars.
I heard that the
right,
only thing you
Ian?
liked more than Munchkin was Spyfall.
I love Spyfall. Can we play Spyfall right now?
no.
I'm not on the moon.
But with Munchkin, it was complicated by the way they described it, but not by the way it was executed.
Oh.
And we did not get to see that in this rulebook just because
Because I'm fucking terrible.
I wasn't going to call you out. It's not that you're terrible.
It's my
just
copy of
that,
Tsuro, and I...
Yeah, no, it's just that you play this game a lot, and I'm sure it just got lost in the shuffle because you really like this game.
Also, who needs a rule book for Tsuro after you learn how to play? It's one of the easiest games not only to understand how to play, but to explain. It is, as long as you can show people how, you can explain it in like 30 seconds. I said this during the stream, but it is easily the game I've had the most success with getting people to play if they've never played a tabletop game.
Fair.
There's also, on the side of the box, all you need to know, which is the age range, the timetable, and our first category, number of players.
Oh, that was a terrible hoot. I don't know what happened to my voice there. Oh, can you tell it's the first week back from break?
So, for number of players, I gave this a 2.
What the fuck?
I know,
Yeah, me
right?
too.
What is your expectation? 8 players isn't
4 to
enough?
6.
No, it's not that it's enough.
8 players is too much.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
2 players is, quite frankly, doesn't
And-
seem like enough.
See,
Just-
2
See, I
players...
could see 2 more than 8.
Yeah.
Well, just to tie into what you're saying, Jeremy, you even admitted that this is one of those games that does start to slow down the more people you add because of all the decisions.
It becomes more of a party game once you reach 6 or more people. But I still think it works really well. I would agree that 2 and 3 are but I actually think 4 to 8 players is pretty fun all the way around.
Okay. Maybe it's just me personally, but 8 is a lot
It just
for me to keep
you
in my head.
Again, it's one of those games that's designed to be casual because you can't take it too seriously. With 8 players, so much of it is just luck and nonsense that it really is just, it becomes such a just fun, chill thing where you're just going around playing things.
And I don't think it's to its detriment, but it is something to take into account. I did dock it 0.5 point for that.
For what?
Yeah, Will, for what?
Well, because the whole strategy of the game changes after 6 players.
yes.
I'm just teasing you because you just gave the blank look of what do
Oh,
you
I
mean?
had no fucking idea what he was talking about. I was like, what?
So my other thing with
I actually
8
find it
players...
one of the biggest strengths of the game. Have you guys ever played Tsuro with 8 people?
No,
I
that's why I docked
I
it.
would,
Tsuro of the Sea, I think, with like 6 to 8 people.
I find Tsuro with 8 people extremely fun.
Well,
I will
that's
be
why we
honest.
have the rubric and different people on the show. That's the best part.
Because now you have somebody who's right. So when you guys are all wrong, at least I'm right.
It is the Jer show.
But it is...
I am legally mandated to
the
be
only
right.
score that matters.
I gave it a Jer out of Jer.
So I will
Go on.
say for the 8 players section, one thing that I did notice, because we played, you and me, on like the tables at our old game store.
Sure.
So many years ago. And one of the things I hate with the 8-player games, especially when you have to constantly edit the board, is you're reaching over people all the time.
Yeah.
We were kind of getting a little crowded a little bit towards 4 players. At this table size with 8 people,
Yeah.
I would be in social panic mode.
Fair.
You'd have to be very close to these friends.
I'd be
Yeah.
like, do I smell okay? Do I...
No. False.
I just
Well, if
gotta
you're at the
work.
game club, that doesn't matter as much. Let's be honest.
It matters to some people.
It does.
Yes,
False.
But like to be banned for excessive body odor is definitely a high bar.
True.
So inclusivity, I gave it a 3.
Yeah,
Like,
3.
this was-
Same.
I even disagree with the fact that this could be played by people younger than 8.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I was talking while we were playing about how this is very much a Candyland feel for me, where it's very intuitive. and as long as you understand logically how steps work, you can play this game without much of an issue.
I think you just need one person who is old enough to really understand the game, and then you can play it with really young children.
One of you needs to be 8.
Yes, exactly. One of you needs to be able to look at the tiles and understand, okay, the line clearly overlaps, but it goes this way because you can see the flow of it. But like that's it. That's the only part of this that really requires that much.
At some point, I feel like the age range is just a matter of the pieces are choking hazards, and that's it.
I mean, this is pretty big. Like, they might be teething hazards. I feel like these
honest,
are very
guys,
teethable.
They look like candy. If I was 8, I would probably try and
I'll
eat
be
it.
honest, guys, there used to be 4 more of them. I ate them. So I see what you're saying. One of them was green, and I thought it was a mint.
Fair.
That's why one of them.
It was pretty good, but
I
did
guess,
not
you know
taste
what?
like mint.
You're right. It's probably a choking hazard because of the size of the
the
pebble
stones.
pieces. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. But they could easily fix that by putting a hole in the middle.
Yeah, totally a guess on my part, by the way. I'm not.
No,
there's no
like
science there.
Knowing my
research.
weird love of packaging, yeah, no, it's that's why.
I think it's because Tsuro has that one tile in it that says "I hate children." Really makes it inappropriate.
I
for
hate
kids.
children
I will
ages
eat
7 and under.
If a child is under 7, they suck, and you're like, "What is this game?"
All right, so inclusivity, I feel like, is a slam dunk.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a whole lot here. There's no tiny text to read.
I would argue
read
this is
anything.
one of the most accessible games because unless you have something that really makes it harder for you to tell lines apart,
I mean, maybe
you're good. That's the only really skill involved.
And you can trace it with the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did. Even if you were colorblind, this would work.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that was one thing I was thinking about for a second. But yeah, no, the contrast is enough that it would
The
be fine for
tiles
that
are
too.
different and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
colored.
And even
Even the pieces.
thinking about the pieces, like if you squint at things, you can see the tonal
No.
contrast between them. Even the tonal
That's
contrast
exactly what I
between
thought
colors.
of.
Yeah,
They
That's
weren't
exactly what I
like
was
bright
thinking of.
colors. They were very muted colors.
they were muted, but they were still
But they
different
were
enough in
They
Yeah.
were
tone.
very
that
different
you
in
can,
shade.
From my color seeing eyes, I could not see a problem squinting and being able to see the differences.
I like it.
Going into comprehension, then. That's another 3 from me.
Oh, easy.
Yes,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was bone
Prob-
easy. This
possi-
is the one game where I didn't need my favorite little cheat sheets.
That might be this game's greatest strength, in my opinion.
Oh, it's so easy to learn.
It's so easy to learn, and it's just as fun when you... It's not one of those games where, like, when you learn it for the first few games, it's not even close to as fun. You really get to the point where it's as fun as it can be pretty quickly.
When you described to me the game when you first came over here, Jeremy, and you said it was just making lines, I was like, okay, cool, all right, and no idea what you meant by that. And you were right. It is literally just making lines.
Yeah.
He did not lie. I knew how to play the game immediately from just that one sentence.
Hell yeah. From now on, when I teach people Tsuro, I'm going to go, it's just making lines, and that's going to be my entire explanation.
Fantastic.
See how they figure it out.
Moving into availability, then.
This is what started the downfall on my sheet.
The downfall.
The downfall on my
Tsoro's
sheet.
great
So,
downfall.
I'm not going to say this game is hard to find. If you go to like a local game store or you look online, you can definitely find it.
Yeah.
But compared to some other games we've had on here where like you can go to Target or Walmart and you're like, oh, there's like 30 of these, or it's not quite that accessible.
The inconsistent pricing. I know that's down for price, but inconsistent pricing to me is a sign that it is not available enough. So when it becomes inconsistent, that means there's sometimes scarcity of finding it, which worries me.
I do think that a lot of this is unfortunately to the game just not being a game that really clicks.
And also a game from 2005.
But also, like, you see Risk,
Yeah.
it's war. You see Candyland, it's a board game where you're doing stuff with candy. You see Tsuro, it's spiritual dragons on a board with lines. I just don't think the aesthetic decisions of Tsuro really do it any favors of making it like a really memorable, easy to remember game. When I say Tsuro, nobody remembers what I'm talking about, even if they've played Tsuro.
Well, it's very traditional artwork on the box and
Yeah.
even inside. Although it's weird, the Phoenix is weird for a dragon-based game.
I would say
personally.
the aesthetic feels more like a more in-depth tabletop game that would be harder to find.
Yeah.
But the actual design of the game feels like something you should be able to find in like a Walmart.
I will say, I do remember when, so Phoenix Rising, that we'll go into that a little later,
That's the name I read.
was the newest one that came out in 2019. I do remember seeing some copies of that around when it came around that time. I didn't really pay too much attention to it because my knowledge of Tsuro at that time began and ended with Tsuro of the Sea. I thought that was it. But looking back on it now, it was available shortly when it came out, and then I didn't see anymore.
It doesn't sound that different.
Yeah, I'm just commenting on it.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, I understand why it wouldn't have made that much of a splash. It doesn't sound like it was that interesting compared to Tsuro.
But, yeah, availability could do better, especially for a game that's so easy to get. You would think that it'd be a lot more popular.
There's also not a lot of moving pieces to this, too.
Brooke brought up that there should be a travel version of this game. Why is there not a travel?
I am making a travel version. I'm going to talk about that next.
Why is the only copy of this game in a normal-sized tabletop game box when you could easily get away with, like, a bananagram thing, where it's just like a kit, a packet?
Oh,
Speaking of materials, too, like, you say you bring this around a lot. By bringing it around a lot, do you mean you're like throwing it in the back of cars, or like how are you bringing this places? I just need to know this.
It's in a bag with other tabletop games.
Okay, no, because I'm saying like I'm trying to see because the box seems like it's well constructed. You've said you had it for about 3 years. There's
way longer
than that. Okay, then it looks good quality for me. Like
I would say so. This is one of the first games I ever got.
Yeah, so the card quality was great. Mm-hmm. It was thick enough. There was no bending of anything. The board wasn't bent at all, really.
They're really, the tiles especially, really nice design.
And if you're playing it as much as you say you are, for only a couple of the tiles to be picking up, like, that's really good.
Yeah, I might be overestimating. I don't play tabletop games that much. I've
brought
it around more than I've played.
Even that
which is why the box is beat up at the inside.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, even that is a lot of stress on, at the end of the day, what is chipboard.
I feel really good about its quality. Personally,
I would like a waterproof version though, because again, this is a very much travel-friendly backpack game, like the last game we played together.
So, did we actually move into materials?
Or? I did. Okay. I did a sneaky segue.
Brooke
I was gonna say, that was materials though.
Segue.
Yeah, I gave it a 2. I feel like you're right. There really should be kind of more to maybe like something to organize in there a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't fit perfectly.
It just has one column in the middle.
Yeah,
it does. But being that it's such a simple game and such a simple amount of, it's only tiles. That is it. It really should be a smaller box or a better setup in there. Mm-hmm. Like it.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Again, it's just like one middle opening.
It's an average size box.
I feel like it does need to be that size because of the construction of the game board, though.
Board, definitely.
Then you put another fold in the game board.
This is very true.
It's just like you either have to make it a better organizational system or downsize the box size.
But then and I'm just playing devil's advocate on this one. How would you be able to do an additional cut in that without making
and make it like a 2x2 or a. Because it's all set up in a grid. You can fold on the grids.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fair. You're right.
Like they set it up to be a travel game and just never did a travel game. Sorry.
So moving into gameplay, before we get too nitpicky on materials, because we could talk about materials all day.
I wish
it is my favorite subject, and I've contemplated just doing a small section, like separate from everything else.
Brooks Materials Corner.
You don't understand. It would be a half-hour podcast of just me talking about the.
It's a sideshow.
Yeah, honestly,
sideshows. I'd love that, Brooke. I'd do it with you. Brooke, if you
ever consider sideshows,
if you just want to vent about or just go and rant about materials, I'll be on that podcast with you for sure.
Okay.
Honestly,
but
we
enough
could
about my
set up
career.
a corner like right over there, just film you while you're talking about things.
Well, I'm livid.
Yeah, livid about.
Yeah, set up again. One of the thing's greatest strengths. Like wow,
bone easy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine any gripes about
bone easy.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's
easy as
the
bones.
easiest thing possible.
It's easy as bones.
It's the easiest thing possible. This is a normal saying.
You know bones? They're easy.
I've even said it like 3 times in this podcast so far. It's a normal saying.
Okay.
I just don't call you out on these things, bro. I wouldn't say it's normal.
It's
Brooke,
normal.
why do you think your bones are easy?
Well, have you ever had to do anything with your bones?
It's usually pretty hard, honestly. I have scoliosis. My bones are really... they're having a tough time.
I haven't thought in depth. Like, this is just something that my family's always said.
I mean, I've heard of bone tired.
I've heard of bone dry.
But I've never heard of bone easy.
It just is... It's just there. It's easy. You don't think about it. You have
Bone
bones.
hard.
Welcome
Also-
to the new section of the podcast where we grade Brooke's weird sayings.
Look,
That
I'm
could be a podcast.
I'm
Does
just
not
saying-
make a lot of
My
sense.
I feel-
family's from Chickamauga, Georgia. This could be a whole section of the podcast.
I'm just saying, I feel like bone hard makes more sense than bone soft.
Bone easy. Yeah, bone hard does actually make more sense.
Guys,
My
can we
bones are
get back
always
on
wet.
track? Because we're keeping this in, but like, I feel called out.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I just want to know I just want to know personally what I feel comfortable saying after bone because it sounds like a great little trick, and I'm a little jealous that you get to do it.
Fair. What do you want to say?
I'm
going to
start saying bone hard whenever anything is tough,
Okay,
and everybody's going to deal with it.
that's
This
fine.
game, the opposite of bone hard,
Bone easy.
bone soft.
Bone soft makes me uncomfortable. I don't know why.
Soft as bones.
I have a calcium deficiency.
All right, so before we continue to roast Brooke for this out of
It's
place
okay.
saying,
I'm
we should
desperately
go
trying to
rate
make
of
this
play.
not about roasting Brooke.
It's okay.
Moving into rate of play, 3 points.
See.
Very fast.
Yeah. Goes as fast as you want it to, honestly.
Oh yeah, and this is with us having a conversation. We were able to get through 2, considering doing a third one before dinner.
I timed out our podcast, or our stream rather, so that I figured it would be like 15, 20 minutes per game. And like, okay, well, we start at 6:30. We should be done by like 7 tops. We were done by like 7 or 6:45.
Oh
If
yeah.
you want to see that, go to our YouTube channel.
Don't watch it. I'm embarrassed.
You
Don't
shouldn't
do it.
be. You look
It's
great.
called reverse psychology, Ian.
Shit.
You know what? Don't like and subscribe.
I mean,
Let's not
we're
say
good.
Yeah,
that.
no, don't do that.
No.
Please like and subscribe. I beg of you.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Better.
price.
I'll wear a
This
wig.
is-
I'll put it on. Whatever you want me to do. Just like and subscribe.
I will be on this podcast every week, and I won't even talk. I'll just sit here for you.
It wouldn't even be the first time I put on a dress for this podcast.
No, it wouldn't be.
Can I put on a dress for this podcast?
Wouldn't you
Sure.
put on a
Yeah.
dress?
Yeah.
Next time you come back, we'll do Pretty Pretty Princess.
I'm always a pretty princess, Brooke.
We'll talk
I
about
found
this
that
later.
very hurtful.
I think we said this last time you were on here too. Yeah, we were gonna do Pretty Princess.
I'm consistent, guys. You know what? My personality, it is not hard to pin down.
Well, no, now you know three times you
Now
gotta
it's
do it.
got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like Beetlejuice.
Well, no. What was the game you were trying to get us to play earlier? Coup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. You don't get to
Jeremy's
play
favorite
Coup.
True,
game.
true,
No
true,
coup.
true.
No coup for you.
No coup.
But
you get
Pretty Princess.
But can I be a? But if we
You
are,
can
if
throw
we're
a coup with your
princesses-
Pretty
I was gonna say
Princess.
if we're princesses and we play coup, it's like thematic.
So for price though,
I would say being a princess a little more expensive than you expect. I've seen the Disney Channel movies.
yeah, you have it. I think this is one of the more expensive games for what it is, like
It's really
material
weird
wise.
how expensive it is.
Yeah,
I'll be
for
honest.
material wise, I gave it a 1.5
Me too.
because like for what I get in the box, mind you, there's a very pretty little rice paper thing on top of it that shows like little bamboo. It's very thematic.
That's where the
but,
half point came from.
That's not worth like the $10 that they upcharge.
It doesn't seem to serve a purpose. I looked
just-
at it.
it's just aesthetic.
I'm gonna guess that it was to separate the what do you call it, the manual from the game itself, like as a second buffer or something.
No, I believe it's always been on the top there. I believe it's supposed to be what you see when you open the box.
Oh, so it's just like a you keep on bumping.
I know.
Okay.
Don't acknowledge it. Stop looking at it. I'm embarrassed. Stop looking.
So
It's a
it's
little
just
cold in here.
so it's just supposed to like lead you into the game
I think
experience.
so.
Okay. I was trying to figure out a reason, but it's still not $10 worth. Like I feel like this is a little high for the
See,
price
I
point.
gave this 2 because I would say this game is, going back to materials, extremely well made. The materials are pretty high quality, which I think it's overpriced, but I don't think, like, if you play this game a bunch, it's not like you're getting robbed.
Does anyone know off the top of their heads how much Catan is?
It's like $30 usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same price.
And
Okay.
Catan is far larger than this.
Far
one.
more
It's larger,
Way
but
more
I'm just
pieces.
trying to, in my head, like, find a dupe for the quality of the cards.
Oh.
So I'm just in my head thinking, like, around the price range of the chipboard they use.
Yeah, I would say it's a little overpriced, but I did give it a 2.
Yeah.
I think if you played enough, I feel it's very
I feel
Agreed,
like
but it's just like at a base level entry, I feel like if I had spent this much money on it and then opened the box, I'd be a little disappointed.
I give it a 2 as well. I guess I'm just used to being kind of ripped off by board games. A lot of them
What
kind
a
of
great
follow.
reason.
Well, they do kind of follow that price point of there's like, unless it's a card game, because those card games are usually 25.
Yep.
The small board games are 30. Large board games are like 60 to 100.
Yeah.
And that's just how it's always been, and I never questioned it.
Look, I'll be honest. I think the thing that separates me from being okay with that is that at the end of the day, the figurines are just rocks.
Yeah.
If they had done like actual dragons, like the cool Etsy things we had found, there's a couple like places you can get nice figurines of dragons, or at least the SDL files.
I'm just a good little hobby consumer.
I don't make enough money to do that.
I don't either.
Fair. I just spent a lot of money on the prize box to get my 5th graders to clean up for me.
I pay 5th graders.
Don't worry, we won't tell them, and they definitely will never find this recorded evidence.
I'm going to go play
No,
Tsuro.
they fully
Not in
know.
time.
I call them jobs. I give them job cards, and they give me the cards back to get the payment in the prize box.
That's funny. I'm going to go play Tsuro with all your 5th graders.
Oh,
See
they'd
what they
love
think
that.
of
Please
it.
don't do
They'd
that.
love you, but
I want to show up
look, this
to
game
a 5th grade classroom.
totally
and play
off
Tsuro.
topic. But this game, we always talk about donating games. Like if
We
we
do?
buy a copy, well, the
I
bards.
haven't talked about that once. What are you talking about?
The bards have always talked about how if we are to buy,
This is my show.
We've
This
never
is
done
the-
any
I've never
of the
talked
Jared
about
show,
that.
this
bro.
is the Jer show, but in our normal non-Jer universe,
There's a non.
we have a gaming club that's high school based that like we contemplate donating things to when we buy
Aw.
different games.
Like,
And we
I
talked
love
about
that.
this last time that like Munchkin we were not comfortable with donating.
Mm.
But like this game, if I had bought a copy, would have gone to that game club because
Yeah,
that
if
is
I
a
buy
very
if we buy copies, we'll do that.
oh yeah, because
Awesome.
whenever we have extra games, because we can't keep all these games.
I love this so much. That's so cool. Everybody, you guys should listen, like, and subscribe to Dancing with the Bards.
We're donating all of our
I think their
Blood
game
Bowl
club
orders to
president
a
is
fifth
tired of
grade
us.
team.
Yeah, probably.
But you're giving them shit.
It's someone in our group. Like
Ah.
they just are tired of us for other reasons. But we do, yeah. So just I just like this game.
So, speaking of price, we talked about availability, we talked about price, we should talk about extras.
This makes me sad.
Yeah, I
gave
think
it
it's the
one.
only one I have on here. So there are other additions of this game. There's Tsuro of the Seas, which is Tsuro, but you have a sea monster that moves in random directions. There's Tsuro Phoenix Rising, which is you can flip the tiles around because they're double-sided,
Mhm.
and you can rotate them. And there's rules on how to do that. I've only played Tsuro of the Sea. I talked to Larry, who's been on the podcast a bunch. He's played Phoenix Rising, and he was telling me that he didn't like it because it made it feel a lot more competitive.
Which
Okay.
is not a good angle for Tsuro, I would
Well,
agree.
I mean, it does broaden their player
I
base
guess.
because there are some people that cannot play a game unless it's competitive.
And while I
Yeah.
do give like half points for separate games based on the same thing, I generally don't grade them as like a whole. So like they're not really expansions. And I think this game could have expansions, but
I could see just an expansion of just like buying extra game tiles so that you don't have the same experience every time. Like,
But there has to be exactly enough to fill the board.
but why?
or
Well-
more detailed pieces or a travel edition. I was
You can see this, but Jeremy's the
That's
wheels
a
are
good
turning
question. I guess you
because
don't.
you don't really like you can't put more on the board than is physically
it forces
available.
the end of the game into a end game scenario where there's less tiles, so people are more limited. But besides
Yeah,
that,
and
it
there's-
really doesn't have any other.
But if you
gameplay
play this
mechanic.
game a lot,
yeah, no, it's a good
having
point.
new tiles would help keep this game longevity in your
Well, or
tool
even
bag.
just
I
like a
also
different
just,
deck that you could use instead.
I actually think in order for this to work, it has to have one less tile than there are number of spaces, because you have to have one path that doesn't lead off the board. If you have the
Okay.
tiles connected to every spot, then every single path leads off the board. Every time we've ended the game, it ends with the person who's in that one spot that hasn't led off the board.
Well, that's also just like
You stop
common
then.
sense, though.
Yeah,
like
you
that's
stop
just
when there's one spot left.
yeah. Even if you would, like, we have the little dragon tile which we didn't use. You could put that, like, that could be your end game, like a
And then you
I'm trying to
just
think of a game
start
that you
building on
like.
top of the other tiles until
Yeah, it's
someone else
it's
is
like when you
forced off the
scream
board.
bingo. Like
That'd
you
be
instead of
awesome.
screaming bingo, you can put the dragon tile
Well,
in.
that said, now if you look in the box, we talked about how they only have the one column for all the tiles to go into. If you put dividers into there, you could have like 3 different sets of tiles. Maybe with like terrain additions, like there's a lake or something in the way in one of the tiles.
I would say even just like different styles, where like one of them has a lot of patterns that crisscross, and one of them's more just patterns that like stay in their own areas, and lanes, and like loop back into themselves. Like you could come up with like decks that just had different feels to the game, which I think would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
The reason why this is a 1 is because 4 smelly nerds in a room have come up with 3 ideas in the matter of 5 minutes.
Yes.
And they have great additions
I
to
will
the
tell
game.
you the exact reason I gave this a 2, even though I was considering giving it a 1. Because I walked in here and Ian went, here's a sheet from the internet where the people who made this game have 3 different ways to play this game, and also they once made a Star Wars licensed version of it.
Yeah.
And between those 2 things, you know what? Those are some sick extras.
Fair.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because that's the same reason I gave it a 2. The extra ways to play, I think, adds great variety. I wasn't thinking about the different tiles at the time, but that is definitely something they could have done. But I really think with the way the game is set up, it does kind of require a fixed tile. You can't really add expansions. You could theoretically change the board and make it like a different shape or something, and that could be interesting. But that's really all you can do.
I think this just means that Ian and I are material girls, and we want physical things instead of rules in the air.
Yeah, a little bit. I do like my things. Don't touch my things. But so the thing with the Star Wars game, I didn't mention it in when we were talking about.
We
the
shouldn't
editions.
talk about it. Just leave it like that. Just leave them wanting
You
more.
can't buy it anymore. It existed briefly, according to the publishers. They were talking about it on a YouTube video where they said that you can't buy it because they initially went to publish it when the Star Wars license was up for grabs.
Yeah.
They managed to publish it in France, and then Star Wars was like, "No, give us that back." And
Never
so
have
they
I
couldn't
wanted to be
publish it
French more in my life.
anywhere else. So their only editions of this that exist are in French, as far as I know.
That's
I
so
also don't
cool.
think that's going to be a problem, though, because this game doesn't need words.
But I have to wonder if that makes it rare or valuable for like collectors.
Oh, definitely.
Star Wars collectors for sure.
That's a big
board
market.
board game collectors, like we're trolls. Like we're just little dragon
I
trolls.
know I'm disgusting. You don't have to rub it in.
that want to hoard everything, and like that definitely causes it to have value. I mean, I think there's a toothpaste that is Star Wars
Did
branded.
you just
That
say
is
toothpaste?
toothpaste.
I thought you were talking about a board game that was toothpaste. It
No.
like revolved around teeth.
No, that's what I'm gonna create.
I was
Identifying
like,
by
That's what I'm gonna
size
create.
style.
But no, there's like a toothpaste that's like Star Wars themed from like
yeah, Star
I
Wars
was
is
thinking more
everything.
like
South Africa or something that
Having
like
a full
is
set of
super
molars.
valuable because it was non-licensed but still used licensed.
That's
It's a whole thing.
awesome.
Collectors will collect no matter what you do.
Mhm. That's why Funko Pops exist.
Oh god, yeah.
Oh, let's not remind each other of that.
Speaking of Larry,
Anyways, enjoyment.
Who's gonna be
zero.
here next? Right, he's gonna be on the
He's
next
gonna be in Blood
podcast.
Bowl,
yeah.
Pray for me.
So going into enjoyment,
I
give
don't
this-
enjoy Funko Pops.
I give this a 2. I do like this game. After playing 2 games of it though, and it only took about like 25 to 30 minutes, I don't think I really had a third in me. I had it in me for the purpose of making content. I don't think I would have personally gone on for a third game.
See, I gave it a 3 because this very much has the feels of like when my grandma used to play bridge with her friends, and where you just sit and talk and do the same things over and over again, and it's just like an active outlet.
It facilitates
While you're talking.
conversation.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like for the ADHD souls that need to fidget while they talk, so it like gives you something to
Why
do while
do
you
you think
talk.
I like tabletop games in general?
Fair. I mean,
No,
yeah.
literally though, that's one of the best things about them, in my opinion.
But yeah, I enjoy it. I just by game 2, I feel like I'm going through the motions.
Yeah,
See, one thing
I don't find that a bad thing.
One thing I
I like
found
consistency.
about this game that I find very interesting is it's a game that sometimes clicks and sometimes doesn't. Kind of like a party game in that way,
Yeah.
where sometimes I'll break it out and we'll start playing and everybody will be having the greatest time of their goddamn lives. And then sometimes everybody's just like, we're playing, we're having an okay time, it's fine. Oh, we're done? Okay, that's fine. So it's not that much of a commitment. So I think it's like a really, really, really solid game. but I also gave it a 2 for enjoyment, just because sometimes it doesn't click the way that other times. Again, kind of like a party game, where sometimes you break it out and it's just not the vibe.
Fair.
As for recommendation, though, I gave it a 3.
Oh, me too.
Me too.
So easy to play.
It's one of the easiest games to recommend.
I am so into recommending this that I am going to be making a travel version for myself to throw in a backpack, like by making a cloth game mat.
So I think I had mentioned before, this is very just based on your travel thing, they should have little pegs or something so you can click the tiles into place.
Yeah, that would definitely
just a board with like edges.
Yeah,
that'd work too.
Yeah, just have, and that wouldn't be hard. If they had a board with edges, it would literally just be gluing a piece of cardboard on top of cardboard.
Yeah.
Like, easy peasy.
But I think this is a great game, and people should try it if they have access to it. I wouldn't necessarily say to pay a full price, like for what they're offering, $33, $35. It ranges a lot, but if you see it and you have like a party going on, it's not bad for what it is.
Or if you're trying to get someone comfortable with the concept of board games, like you said before, it's a very good starter board.
It's honestly pretty far from any of my favorite tabletop board games. Like, my favorite tabletop game is Coup, and Coup is also not a hard game to teach and a pretty quick game. And I always want to teach new people Coup. But Coup scares them, and Tsuro doesn't.
I just don't like
Coup,
lying.
people look at it and they're like, oh, it's a hidden identity. There's a bunch of cards. There's a bunch of rolls.
Coup gets aggressive.
But Tsuro, I break it out and they're like, oh, we just follow the lines with our things? I can do that. It feels accessible and doable in a really, really valuable way.
Oh, yeah.
Play the game.
Yeah.
Play it.
But replay value, without the extras, like I think of having different tiles that you can swap in and out, I can see this becoming very formulaic very quickly.
Yes.
Where it's just, you don't have a lot of creativity left after using the cards over and over again.
It's my main gripe for enjoyment was replay value, so I give it 2 for that as well.
Yeah.
See, replay value is one of those things. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I gave it a 2 for what Brooke and Ian were just saying. I feel like after 4 or 5 games and everyone's seen all of the tiles, it becomes... you said in our second game, after you place the tile, well, the best tile in the game has already been placed.
There's a few tiles that...
Yeah.
There's like 3 that the paths are like uniform on every side, and it makes things a lot easier sometimes to place.
You know what? If we had extra tiles, speaking back to me nerd in the room trying to figure out how to make it work, if you got to pick... like, I don't know, what's 6 times 36? So if you pick 35 cards, I think that's how many there were. Was it 6 by 6?
Yeah.
So 35 tiles, like if you just grab them at random and then stack them up, like you could still have that spot in the middle be...
I was trying to think if that was possible. I couldn't think through if that would work, but I think it would.
Yeah.
It would.
I would say replay value is one of the things that is most affected, in my experience, by number of players. Okay. When you get to like 7 or 8 players, there's a lot more replay value because... if you think about it, how the tiles being placed on the board changes drastically. Because when you have 4, each tile is only being placed from one of the 4 dragons. When you have 8, suddenly tiles are coming in from every direction. Because each of the 8 different dragons have tiles spanning out. So it gets... there's a lot more variation and a lot more chaos when you have 7 or 8 players. There's a point in the game where every turn you're moving 2 or 3 dragons.
Fair.
So I think there's some of this that's really not affected too much by how many players, but replay value I would say more players definitely helps with, because it can get very formulaic, as you're saying, with less people.
So going into our sliding scales, which are my favorite part. I had to say this. I gave this an innovative 2 because it's unlike other maze games I've played. Like, I consider this a maze-based game where you're following through the lines and you're trying to figure out what matches. But most of the maze-based games I've played have been similar to Labyrinth, where it moves on you and around you and not necessarily like you traveling it, which was interesting.
I gave it a classic 2. I feel like at its core, it's a very, very simple concept of follow the line and move where you need to go. The name escapes me right now, but I've played a game that is very similar to this that's been around for a while, where it's essentially just
Can you describe it? We might help.
You're just making lines. You have like a punnet grid square, and you're like making lines to like move around.
Okay, no, sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know
good
that
try
one.
on that one.
Yeah, we used to
figured I'd
play
give it a
in
shot.
elementary school all the time.
I gave it a classic 3, basically just because it does follow the same structure as a lot of maze games, like you were saying. I guess the moving the tiles and placing them yourself aspect is pretty innovative. But
It's also just because I'm a geek for maze games, so like I see something different in a maze game, and I go, ha!
I mean, aside from the fact that you place the tiles and where they go, there's not a lot of difference between like this and the randomness behind something like Chutes and Ladders, for example. Except instead of a die, you're
Why
just
do
getting
people keep
three-
comparing this to
three
Chutes
tiles.
and
This is
Ladders?
Chutes
Because it's
part.
another maze game. Like it's
Yeah.
another.
Really
We've
doesn't-
had this come up like 3 times.
I
in
don't play
stream.
Tsuro and think, yes, Chutes and Ladders.
Well, because you have to try and compare it to something, and like Chutes and Ladders, everyone has played.
I guess.
So like they're just trying to think, oh, what game makes me go in directions that I don't intend?
What game makes me go in directions
That I don't intend to. Like I don't want to go down that
Yeah, fair.
chute.
I give it a 1 on classic because I actually think I when I think of this game, I don't think it's specifically classic or innovative. It's not one of the things that strikes out to me about it. It might just have to do with my lack of knowledge of how the tabletop board game scene and how far they go into maze-like games and stuff, though.
Yeah.
But this game just seems, it's what it is. It's definitely a little more classic than innovative to me, but it's just it's a pretty basic idea, in my opinion. That isn't like the most classic thing in the world, but has enough going for it that it'll grab your attention.
Fair.
That's why I gave it a simple score.
yeah, I gave it a simple 3.
I gave it a simple 2.
I give it a simple 3.
I gave it a simple 3. I thought it was very simple for the same reasons I said earlier. I had one sentence as a primer for this, and I knew immediately what I was doing once the board was set up. This is as simple as it gets. I would say probably even simpler than like Go Fish.
Honestly, kinda. It's a
Yeah.
game that's just so easy to break out at any event.
Oh yeah.
Which is surprising when you see the box, because it does not look like a very accessible game.
I was a little scared when
Yeah.
you pulled out the
Right?
box, and I was like,
I feel
asking
like-
to look at the back.
I feel like
and-
if they re-released this with updated cover artwork, not even changing the actual
So
inside bits.
I do think the C version is much better in that respect,
Yeah.
because when you see the C version, it's very clear. You are ships on a sea, and even if you play it without the sea monster, it just intuitively makes more sense that you are ships on a sea and you don't want to fall off.
Yeah,
and you don't want to crash into each other.
I think
And you're
this-
like, okay, cool, that makes sense.
I think the seriousness of this artwork, though, makes it seem not accessible to
Yes.
8-year-olds when it is.
It makes it seem very. It just
Yeah,
looks so much more
it looks
complex.
serious, and it's not a serious game. Well, I mean, it could. It's set
It's
up to be
not,
zen,
yeah.
but like, I feel like the artwork they put on the cover detracted from.
Maybe that's what they're going for. They're going for a typical Zen meditation vibe, but it has more of a vibe of like ancient Chinese epics,
Yeah, but it's,
like
it's,
dragons and battles.
If you put like just spitballing, like a little dragon family doing like Zen gardening or something, like that would show that it's accessible to multiple ages.
A little dragon family doing
Like little
gardening.
No, like the Zen, like
no,
the little,
yeah, with the little rake and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it.
But like it just, I feel like this it gatekeeps it. Like it makes
Yeah.
it hard to approach
Yeah.
because you're so
approachable.
it's
That is the
missing that
exact word.
approachable aspect.
Yeah.
It's accessible, but it's not approachable. You're welcome. Bye,
Boom.
guys. Podcast over.
No, wait, we still have to give our final scores.
Yep.
You can't run away without
It's
that.
my podcast, and I decide when it ends.
Hey,
I'll
it's
read
the
it for
Jared
you
Show
then.
brought to you by Dancing with the Bar.
So the Jer Show part is over. See you guys.
I gave it turned out to be a 32 out of 42 for me, which surprised me. But like hitting that low on extras really tanked it for me.
I ended up giving it a 36 and a half. There's some half points in there, but I think it scored relatively well in the grand scheme of things.
Mhm.
This is a very fun game.
34 out of 42 for me.
So I gave it a 36 out of 42, and I did the math to figure that out, and that's an 85, like 0.7, which I think is almost exactly correct. Like, I wouldn't say this is top tier or anything that I'm raving about, but it is so solidly a very good game that there's no... I wouldn't entertain anybody's argument where they're like, actually, Tsoro's overrated. It's so simple and so just good on its merits that, like, yes. If you gave this anything less than, like, a B, I'd be like, come on. But at the same time, I definitely, if anybody had given it, like, a 39 or 40, I would have been surprised as well. So I very much agree with a lot of our scores hovering around, like, the 8 to 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's great for me that it's fun and simple. That simplicity is kind of like its biggest detractor for me. Mm-hmm. That it's hard to be to keep playing and for a game to be particularly meaningful. It's great to pass some time.
I've never played more than like 4 or 5 rounds of this in a row.
But it's not something that like I would play regularly unless I was trying to entertain someone for like 10 minutes.
Well, I would say, in my experience, its best value is as not only as an introductory game, but as an opening game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As we're going to play tabletop games tonight, before we get into anything too
heavy,
over the top or too much that I have to explain, let's play some Tsuro.
A board game palate cleanser.
Yeah,
That's a good way to describe this. That's a great way to actually use this too.
yeah.
Is that going to be our headline?
The board game palette cleanser.
Tsuro, a board game palette.
It almost
cleanser.
undersells it though, doesn't it? 'Cause
It
it's
really
more
does.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, it's.
I think a palette cleanser is right, but when you say a board game palette cleanser, it sounds like it cleanses your palate of board games, not for board games.
Well,
and I would say
that's
it does
what
it
you do
for
at the
board
real
games.
fancy restaurants. Is they give you a palate cleanser before you eat.
It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's like the ginger you're supposed to eat in between sushi.
Yeah, this is the ginger of the board game.
They're the smelling salts of the board game.
Yes. When you're doing when
He's
you're
resetting
smelling,
his palate
it's
before
like-
he drinks our
okay,
piss.
this is very this is a very like niche reference that no one's gonna get.
Don't worry, mine
if you're
was just a
looking-
reference as well. I promise you I wasn't just talking about drinking piss offhand.
If you are looking for perfumes, in between perfumes, you smell coffee beans for the same reason.
Oh, yeah,
it
no.
resets you.
Same at Yankee Candle.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
literally, I was referencing an Anti-Donna sketch where to get across resetting your palate, they're doing that exactly.
Oh, okay.
And they literally call it out because you can't tell what they're doing. He's like, oh, he's smelling that to reset his palate.
Okay.
Coffee beans.
Yeah.
It's not salt, it's coffee beans.
All right.
Does anyone else have comments?
I think we're pretty good. We touched on everything.
Yeah. The comments kind of flew in pretty organically this time around.
I honestly think an 8.5 out of 10 is perfect, but I could not recommend this game enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going in a different direction.
No. Like, I wouldn't say it's a 9 out of 10 by any means. I'd probably argue with someone if they really had that opinion strongly, but I could not recommend this game more.
This is a solid 87%. That is a passing grade.
That's way above passing.
I don't know.
That's an arguably good grade.
I never got anything that high. I wouldn't know. What letter is that? Is that above a D?
It's a B+.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really up there.
Yeah, you're doing pretty well at 87.
All right. Thank you for listening to The Jer Show. If you like what you heard, you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. You can find us at
With Bards on Twitch.
and at Dance with the Bards on Twitter.
Oh, and we have that new thing too.
Mastodon I am working on.
You can try and find us there. I feel like it would have to do something with the Bards.
It's at with bards at crater.gg. And that's CR8R.
Okay. If not, I'm sure that Ian will put it somewhere else too.
Yes. We also have, if you go to our Twitter, we have a link tree of all of our things.
There we go.
Fuck yeah,
See?
link tree.
Ian's
including
on
our
it.
Discord server.
Oh, that's right. We do have one of those.
We do have one of those.
You should come to that.
Join us.
Join me on the next episode of The Jer Show when I tell you about Joey Fingers and all the wonderful things he does with his fingers in my D&D campaign.
Goodbye.
No. Bye, guys. No, you don't need that.
The Jer Show has been canceled.
Ah, damn it. Canceled again by Twitter.
See you for Pretty Pretty Princess.
All right,
Thanks
Chris,
for
at this
having
point
me on,
here, I
guys.
would like you to take the first 6 seconds and just clip it. Please and thank you. Good night.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.